Welcome to Tooling Up, a series by MSC Industrial Supply Company that provides real-world insights brought to you by leading industry experts and aimed at improving the efficiency and productivity of your operations.
Welcome to MSC's Tooling Up videocast. My name is Jamie Goettler, and once again, I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Tom Kurfess and Dr. Scott Smith. Both doctors are from the Department of Energy's Oakridge National Laboratory. Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. It's been really wonderful having you be part of our first two episodes, and I'm going to summarize some of the learnings and things that we talked about. In the first episode, we kind of drew a line in the sand, and it was, let's talk about Executive Order 13806 that was published in late 2018, and what were some of those findings? And it was found that STEM skills in the United States, needed to be improved, that we were overly dependent on foreign supply chains, and that there was a number of things from a manufacturing perspective that put us in a position in the United States to not be as agile and as resilient and self-supportive as certainly we need to be. And we talked about the fact that the executive order was really positioned from a standpoint of what if a defense effort was necessary, a homeland security concern. Well, thank goodness we didn't have that, but we did have the pandemic, which wasn't much better. But the pandemic showed to us, and we talked about that in episode 2, just how the executive order was correct, that we weren't in a position to make our own face shields and face masks rather than bullets and armaments and other things that a defense effort would be. So it proved to us that, those adjustments and those improvements were necessary. One of the things that were highlighted in Executive Order 13806 is certainly the skills gap, the manufacturing skills gap. Now, we've all heard of it. You hear it on the news. You see updates from news outlets and from a number of different outlets on a regular basis. And we're going to spend our third episode today talking about the manufacturing skills gap. So let me start with you, Dr. Smith, and really, how did we get to this point? What do you feel were some of the reasons why the manufacturing skills gap has become, so pervasive in America?
So thanks again, Jamie. One of the things that I'll point out is that it's not just the skills, it's the lack of the people with the skills. About 20 years ago, it was generally a widely held perception that manufacturing in general was going to go to low wage countries. And we shifted from a design and build sort of a mindset to a design and sell kind of a mindset. And we spent a generation telling people that this was not a good career choice, and those people made other choices. That turns out to be a bad idea. Manufacturing and innovation are inextricably linked. You can't be design and sell. Manufacturing and innovation go together. If you want to do good designs, you have to make things. We recognize that now. It's pretty clear. But there's a gap in our workforce. A lot of people who had careers in manufacturing are getting close to retirement age. And I guess I'm the one in this call who can say that gray hair is beautiful. And I don't mean to say anything besides that. But realistically, those people are nearing retirement age, and they've got skills and experiences that we are about to lose. Now, we do have new workers, new people coming up into manufacturing who are really smart, really data-driven, and they are reflecting the fact that the character of manufacturing has changed. It used to be a lot of manual skills, physical labor, manual dexterity, and so on. Manufacturing has changed, and it's gotten to a place where now it's a knowledge-based industry. And I think our educational systems, our training paradigms need to reflect that manufacturing in the future is a competition among brains. It's not a competition of brawn.
Excellent. Scott, thank you for that. Dr. Kurfess, anything that you would add is from your perspective to what Scott had shared about how we got to this point? Anything you would add?
I think that Scott has really characterized it. He's right on the money there. And the only thing I would like to add is maybe pivoting towards the future. It's not just sort of brains are important to manufacturing, and we see this across the board. Brains are important across the board, and it really is the education and the know-how. And it doesn't mean that you need to go off and get a PhD. But it does mean that you need to be kept up on the current technology. I mean, I don't know about you, but I look at my, the little Social Security information I get every 6 months or so, and it tells me I'm retiring. I think I'm still retiring before I'm age 70, but that's where it's going. So if you think about it, from 20 to 70, kids are going to be, they're going to be in the workforce for 50 years. I'm a car guy, or you can think machine tools, but let's just think of cars. That's what people are really familiar with, out there. Think about the car 50 years ago. I mean, how the technology has changed, and it's really ramping up. So it's not just about education, but the continuous education. So lifelong learning, and I think that this is really the direction. And by the way, not just for manufacturing, but just across the board. And I can tell you can see this. I mean, just take a look at 13806, that executive order. It gets it. I mean, people get it. The federal government understands, state government, local, and so forth, that it is that capability that's going to move us forward. The brains, not the brawn.
I think what we've been saying is true across the whole manufacturing ecosystem, right? Education is important, but education is important at all levels, and that means in the high school levels, it means in the community college level, it means at the university level. I think certainly one of the things that we're going to have to address is that we're in a hurry. Can we shorten the time that was traditionally required to make someone skillful in the manufacturing area? What can we do, to compress that traditional apprenticeship model, as an example? How do we make knowledge that was gained in the past more readily available to the workers who need it? Just generally, how do we get the information to the people who need it at the time and the place that they need it, so that they can make good decisions using that information?
And let me just add, we're not that far away. I remember, as a student in high school, you took typing, right? Now they call it keyboarding, but they're also teaching them things like spreadsheets and so forth. So really, even high school, they're doing things like Excel and standard deviations and averages. They know how to do that. Well, hey, guess what? That's the X bar and S charts that you have in production. So some of those skills are there. We just need to let them pivot and say, this is how you use it out in manufacturing. So we're not starting from ground zero. There's a lot of there's a lot that we could tie into to really make us move forward.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot of work that's been done and that's in the process of being done. So, what we just explored is, how we got here, and even touched on some of the things that can fix it. But in terms of responding, to the manufacturing skills gap, it seems to boil down to really, two things. It's upskilling people. And what I think is interesting is we do talk a lot and we hear a lot about the younger generations learning about manufacturing, but there's also some continuous learning for our manufacturing customers that are in the business today. And I think that there's this new generation and future generations that can be involved in manufacturing, but there's also this notion of Industry 4.0 and productivity improvements that can really help to close the gap as well. And Scott, I'm wondering if you wouldn't take a moment to talk about, how you view productivity as it relates to the skills gap.
Sure. So, productivity is important if you want to be competitive in the global environment. If there's a wage difference, I think we shouldn't have said that we can't compete against low-wage countries. What we should have said is, given the fact that there's a wage difference, how are we going to compete? And one way that we can compete is to be more productive, right? One way that we can compete is to use the knowledge that's available to make better decisions about our manufacturing processes. I don't think it's that heavy of a lift. I think Tom is right on the money here. We're not starting from zero. I think we have to make a decision as a country that manufacturing is important to us. And then we have to create an ecosystem that delivers the skills and the people with those skills that make the manufacturing robust, competitive, resilient, all of the things that were called out in the response to Executive Order 13806.
Yeah, definitely. Tom, anything from your perspective, if we're talking about responding to the skills gap and thinking about productivity enhancements and some of the things that are readily available today in the manufacturing marketplace that can help, give a stiff arm, if you will, to the manufacturing skills gap. Anything that's jumping to the front of your mind too?
Sure. And Scott has already said this. Every time you make a cut with a machine tool, it's like running an experiment. So when Scott and I were graduate students, 35, 40 years ago, we spent weeks putting these instruments on the machines, and then you had to analyze all the data for weeks afterwards and so forth to get a result. Now it's all there. It's available. It's free. The analytic tools are there, and the reality is the people know how to use it. If you look at, what a lot of industry people or companies are looking to do is they say, hey, we want to hire people who have some good computer skills. Well, we are training a lot of good computer people. And even our junior high and high school kids who are programming Arduinos. This is like, $15, right? It's got more horsepower than than the Apollo main computer for putting Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. Okay, there's your 50-year difference right there. So it's just amazing in terms of what's going on. So the reality is the opportunities are there. And by the way, it is a two-way street. You mentioned Industry 4.0, so that's all the analytics and so forth. And people are like, oh my gosh, well, cloud, and how do we deal with that? Look, we got stuff streaming out to the Google Drive, right? To your Google Drive, right? And so the bottom line is everybody's using Google Drive or something else, AWS, Dropbox, whatever, and so they're used to it. So yeah, these are all integrated together, and it is a two-way street. One thing I do want to highlight is, look, you tie all this together, make sure you do it in a secure fashion. For example, like the Cybersecurity Manufacturing Institute that we're standing up out of Department of Energy. Important, it's called CyMani, right? Cyber Manufacturing Institute, right? So Innovation Institute. But the important thing there is make sure you're safe. But the other thing is, this has other implications outside of manufacturing. Some of the stuff I'm learning about, I can tell you, I came back home and I did a little bit of rewiring at home. And again, these are things that we're just training, machinists, operators, programmers, engineers within plants to do because it's important. So frankly speaking, not only about manufacturing skills, it's also about life skills, and it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Scott.
I think that there's a real opportunity to get some of the educational activities into bite-sized pieces and things that could be done remotely, learned remotely. I think we saw a lot of this during the pandemic. Our capacity to do things remotely is better than we thought it was. And there's a lot of examples of science that we have developed over years that we really didn't do a good job of deploying. I'm a machine tool guy, so I'm going to point at machine tool performance. Most people who use their machine tools just really don't know what the machines are capable of doing, right? They do trial and error, or they make good guesses, and they use their machines and they make good parts, and I don't mean anything bad about that, but the machines are capable of a lot more. And I know you know this, Jamie, because MSC has spent a lot of effort in this area recently. There are tests that we can do, but those tests have existed since the 1960s. Okay, they were well known in laboratory environments. Research institutes knew them very well, but we didn't do a very good job deploying them into the industrial base. I think we have a real opportunity now to cut these kinds of things, and there's a huge pipeline of these tools. Get them in deployable forms into the hands of the people who can really use them. Shorten the distance in time and in space between the information and the people who need the information. If I looked at, for example, the metrology work that we used to do on parts, you make a part and then it would go off to a metrology lab and it would soak there for a while, and then someone would make a measurement. And by the time the information got back down to the machine, it was long after the part was made. Really not in enough time to make any kind of an adaptation to that information. We're measuring that data in real time now and adapting the process on the fly. There are lots of opportunities like this And I'm going to say bite-sized pieces. Continuous learning for people who already have jobs. What can they do? What can they learn to make their job better, to make their company more productive? I think there's a huge opportunity in that.
Yeah,
The only
and
thing,
go, please, Tom.
let me just add, because I just can't help myself. I think Scott missed a really wonderful opportunity in particular. Look, I'm a digital manufacturing guy. When he talks about bite-sized opportunity, the thing I think about is BYTE, man, and I think that's it. And so really, I think they're across the board, and they're going to appeal to a wide spectrum of current generation workforce and next generation workforce. I'll let you go ahead, Jamie, but I just couldn't.
No, listen, I'm so glad that you're sharing that. And Scott, one of the things that you talked about, a couple things, that both of you talked about here in that last response to the last question was, continuous learning or learning, but also virtual learning. And Scott and Tom, I know you're both close to this. Scott, I'll ask you to start. There's forums out there and opportunities free to the public to take advantage of learning about, what you care most about, and that's machine tools and machining. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't, mind sharing a little bit about some of the work that's being done to educate those who might be interested in machining.
Sure. So what Jamie's talking about is a project that we have that was funded by the Department of Defense, the Industrial Base Analysis and Sustainment Group, and we call it ACE, America's Cutting Edge. It has a lot of components to it, but there is an educational component, and there is an online series of courses that you can take that talks about machine tools, machining generally, NC programming, and machine productivity, how to make the best use of the machine that you have in your facility. Now, almost a lot of that content is virtual, and that's really good. People can get experience with these processes remotely, but hands-on is important as well. And so these things are connected to a hands-on boot camp, and we just had the first one of those last week, the first 10 people that went through there. But the training has been a pretty big success. There's over 1,500 people who have taken at least some portion of that online training, and I think it's continuing to grow. There's a demand for this kind of thing.
The demographics, Scott, frankly, that I've seen from Dr. Tony Schmitz has been prominent with ACE. A wide age group, a wide working environment group. Has been involved. So all sorts of folks have gotten involved with ACE, as we've seen. And yeah, last week, ACE completed its first hands-on course, which was absolutely tremendous to see and quite an accomplishment.
If you haven't seen those courses, look for them. ACE and Tony Schmitz has done a terrific job putting that together.
By all means. Dr. Kurfess, as we wind down this episode, any parting shots or comments from you regarding the skills gap, or how the viewership watching this, might think first about how to deal with the manufacturing skills gap? Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, so I think, look, I think we've hit on all the key points here and so forth. As Scott has just talked about in terms of, the whole IBAS approach to the ACE program with machining. I think this is what's going to be happening in a number of different areas. So we've got machining, metrology is going to be coming up, 3D printing, additive manufacturing. So you name it, it's going to be getting out there. So it's going to be more accessible. And I'll sort of end with a futuristic thought. And I agree with the hands-on. There's no doubt about it. I grew up in a machine shop myself, and that's made all the difference. But I think we're also going to see some cool technology in terms of, let's say, virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality coming down the pipe. I gotta wear safety glasses in the shop anyway. Why not make them augmented reality and give you a heads-up display right there? It's coming. How soon? I don't know, but I tell you, that's also going to be a really changing technology, both in terms of just productivity as well as workforce development. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Scott and Tom, again, thank you, for all the great work that you do, and thank you for joining us in these first 3 episodes. You're really creating the foundation for which MSC's Tooling Up video series can jump off. And when I think about the skills gap, the way I'll leave the audience here is several years ago, had an opportunity to work with a vocational technical institute that was involved in advanced manufacturing. And the mantra they shared with me back then I had not heard before, and some of you may very well have, and it was, you know, we can bring somebody in here that wants to learn, and in a couple years, they can be out in American manufacturing in a clean environment and making $60,000 a year, or they can go to a 4-year school, be searching like crazy for a job, and have $60,000 worth of debt. And it really opened my eyes to, you know, what's possible out there, you know, with American manufacturing and the opportunities that exist, you know, for any age of workforce, but particularly the younger workforce. So once again, Scott and Tom, thank you so much. To the viewers, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes of MSC's Tooling Up.
Want more insights and ideas to improve the efficiency and productivity of your operations? Watch more Tooling Up videos now, or subscribe to our channel so you never miss out.